as early as, I don't know, the first time you realize you're riding the subway is the first time that you realize, like, dang, things are happening around me. This is a crazy city, and I want to be part of the way that it's being built. And I think a lot of my human geo classes kind of also supplemented this ideology in my head that, like, the spaces around us, they're very important. They inform a lot of things about us, and I want to be part of that. Obviously, there are other ways to do it, but in that moment, I was like, I'm not doing much. Why not run for city councilor? Why not take the path of, becoming a politician to then influence those spaces that inform us?
Welcome everyone to this episode of Different Boat, Same Storm, a video podcast aimed at kindling empathy amidst the global pandemic.
Today we have a rather special guest with us because this is not just any 20-year-old. This is one of our fellow classmates from the Monk School, Renee Jagdeo. Renee, it's such a pleasure to finally have you and have the gang back together.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Renee, it's great to have you here. A bit about you that we know. You have recently ran for office. You're also just an amazing person to talk to. We were all, for context, in our Monk 1 program together in first year, which was a very interesting program in that it was a first year course, or 2 courses in first year actually, where there were only 25 students in the cohort. And so we all got to know each other quite well. This was before COVID, so we were in person during that time, which is crazy to think about. But Renee, how are you doing today, and what have you been up to recently?
I'm good. We were talking before a little bit about the weather. Toronto is unfortunately extremely hot, and so you can't really get that little break of going outside and some fresh air. But I've been cooped up in my room. I'm doing summer school, currently doing a class on the global food system, which is definitely enlightening amidst, a global pandemic. But yeah, just spending time with myself, spending time with my thoughts, and yeah, kind of just planning for next year, which has been pretty exciting as well. How are you guys?
I am finally getting into the zone where I don't have to look at Quirkus every single day, 7 days a week. And it's a good feeling. I can't deny that. It's a great feeling, and summer is finally set on. I'm swimming every day, so that's exciting. And doing this. Naively bring myself onto Zoom every couple weeks and boring somebody's heads off.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I find that these Zoom calls, in the beginning of the pandemic, they were often such a drag. It was like, oh my God, I have another Zoom call, and they were back to back to back. But I think now, as a lot of us have kind of gotten our schedules together beyond just the computer, these Zoom calls are often actually a real place of connection with other people. And that's what I've found a lot of times. Like this summer, I'm trying to do some research. I'm trying to do some studying. I feel like there's so many things going on, and just having these times to chat is always so nice. But I mean, looking back at this past year of school and where we are now, I think we've all seen some tremendous growth. Renee, I'm curious, because Atharv and I have chatted a bunch about this. What was this past year at school like for you? Navigating online school, but also doing everything else that you do?
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I mean, everyone was thrown into a position where, most of your life was online, and you definitely feel the fatigue of just spending hours on your computer. And then once you finally get up, you're like, oh, several hours have passed. Maybe I should reintegrate myself. And so I definitely tried to avoid that within the first semester of this past school year, as well as a bit of at the end of last semester when the pandemic hit. But I kind of just accepted it at a certain point and was like, you know what, I see my friends over Zoom or FaceTime. I do classes over Zoom. I have professional meetings with people over Zoom. Just lean into it. And so you're right. Yeah, I definitely do feel a lot more comfortable with it. I don't necessarily feel as sad that I'm going into a Zoom chat anymore. But school is interesting. So for the first semester, I actually took a lot less of a course load than usual, just because one, I knew I would not be able to handle the same amount of courses. So for context, in first year, my second semester, I did 6 courses because I was bored. And then this first semester, I did 3. And that was partially because, yeah, I just knew I wouldn't be able to handle it. And then also over the summer, I was like, hey, I want to go into architecture. And U of T's got this crazy thing where you can't exceed a certain amount of credits if you want to switch programs. And so if I did a full like semester worth of courses, basically I wouldn't be able to apply. So I set myself up, and those were the conditions. But little did I know, 2 months in, I'd also decide to run for city councilor. And so it did definitely help to only be taking 3 courses, because that very quickly took over my life. And it was definitely very strange to be jumping from, say, just doing a reading on, the architectural history of like England post like World War II, and then, be chatting with some like professional that is concerned about the well-being of Torontonians. But yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. It looked like jumping between courses, jumping between assignments, and then also slipping into this weird like political persona that I had never had before. And then also jumping into like campaign meetings, which seems really weird to say, because it did just feel like chats with my friends, because my campaign team ended up being a lot of my friends and peers. And, at least 50% of it was definitely spent just talking about random things, and then a little sliver of like, oh, we have things to do. So yeah, I would say that sums up kind of what my semester looked like last year. And similarly now as well, you kind of realize you can do other things besides school, because it seems like it takes up so much of your energy. And that's kind of where I'm going. So as well, this past semester, I took a little bit less, not just 3, a little bit more. But as well, I took on some other things that helped to balance out school. Yeah.
Wow. Firstly, I love how blasé you were about running for city council. That was just it was just an aside in that whole monologue of, yeah, I ran for city council among other things. And I also remember that throughout our first year in Monk 1, we always talked about running a political campaign for whoever ran for president first. And when as soon as he said, hi, I'm running a political campaign, that was the perfect distraction all of us needed. And we were really serious about this, for context, for everybody listening, because there was a Slack channel and everything about this. So we were very, very, very intense.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, yeah, I think I did not see myself being the first person whose political campaign we'd run on collectively for. But it was.
We all voted for Alex.
Yeah, exactly.
We all vouched for Alex.
A little shout out, future.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex Erickson.
Yes.
I'm excited to eventually work on your campaign. But yeah, no, it was definitely nice to have all of the Monk ones within my year, and then also just a bunch of alum as well help out and support me, because yeah, it almost feels like that's all we've been working towards, like being prepared to work on someone's campaign. And it was nice for this to be the like very easy break-in, just, a 19-year-old's campaign for city councilor about things that we were actually involved with and cared about. So that was good.
Yeah, it's legit when there's a Slack channel for something.
I know, yeah. Yeah, that's the benchmark. That's the qualification. No Slack. If there's no Slack, that means you're slacking. That's how I like it.
That's fair. And I was lucky also to have a campaign manager. Another shout out to Zoe Johnson. I don't think I started the Slack channel. I'm pretty sure it was Zoe. I don't know how to describe this. Yeah, no, I don't know how to describe how, and you're right in saying that I very much so gloss over this because it didn't feel that relevant in my life. Because I didn't make it I didn't make it like that important. I truly woke up one morning and felt like a little bit subpar, and I texted Zoe and was like, hey, like, what if I ran for city councilor? Like, today's the last day to get the nomination and like make this legitimate. And she was like, okay. So then, yeah, I put it into the Monk like Facebook group chat. Everyone sent in like a ton of nominations. I ran to like the office with my brother and we were in line. Like, at the last minute of the hour. It was so intense too, for absolutely no reason. Like, there were other people in the office that were also as late as me, which I was like, dang, we're all procrastinating as well. But then the woman in the office brings us into this back room, and she has to go through all of our nomination papers, and she's like checking the addresses, and someone had forgotten to put like the number of their house, of their street address, and she was like, this doesn't count. And I was like, oh my god, because I only had 25 and I only had 24 and you needed 25. And then I had to go outside and find this random man in the office to then also sign it. It was a lot. But yeah, it never really felt legit to me, because yeah, I was just hanging out with friends, and we occasionally talk about like, okay, so how do we plot for, say, like me to get news press, or how do we plot to make me look better than other candidates, or how do we plot to make this platform seem really, really cool? How do we make a website? How do we start a bank account? It all seemed so surreal. And then yeah, at the end of the day, it was just like a bunch of second year university students that like were doing this.
Rising second year, rising.
Right, exactly. But it was interesting. It was interesting for sure.
Wow. Yeah. It brings back memories. And I mean, I understand that at the moment it was just, hey Zoe, planning on running, let's do it. I'm so curious. Most people, when they feel subpar, they usually go for retail therapy or binge eating or browsing through Netflix. Why did you do this? What motivated you to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that's like how I normally react to feeling subpar. It definitely is retail or just sleeping or consuming too much media. But I actually had been thinking about it very loosely for a while. I come from a family where like we're very involved in politics, and that we talk about it and we're like, oh yeah, why isn't someone doing this? Or like, we should do this. But never actually like, yeah, none of us are like, yeah, like why don't you run? And so this random by-election had popped up in the news in terms of like, oh, it will happen. Nothing had opened up yet. And I remember at dinner time randomly, like my parents were like, LOL, we have 3 kids. Why don't one of you guys run? And of course, everyone's like, ha ha ha, like so funny. And then
Unless.
Yeah, unless. And then the second thing that made me think about it is that I throughout like the summer and still periodically this year, I have meetings with Zoe, my other friend Olivia, and our TA turned, I would like to say friend as well, Emily, from our Monk 1 class. We would just catch up every so often, obviously talk about our Green Wall initiative, and then catch up as well. And most of those sessions turn into kind of like a radicalized discussion on how do we make all of the cities green around us. And I was thinking about this by-election, and I was like, haha, guys, like, how funny would it be if one of us became city councilor and then just made this happen? Because, it's a bit hard to be a first year student that has absolutely no credentials and just a crazy idea, but give a kid some power and maybe we can see some things change. So yeah, that was the second ha ha ha. And then finally I just woke up and then realized like it's actually not that hard to put yourself in the position to become a city councilor, or so I thought. And so once again, the final ha 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 what if happened, except I like actually stuck to it by putting it in the Monk group chat, because I knew if I told these people that I was running for city councilor, I'd have to run. I was like 24 people will be holding me accountable. So that's why. The reason why is because, that's how. The reason why is because I live in Toronto. I've lived in Toronto my entire life. I think at any age growing up in Toronto, you like as early as, I don't know, the first time you realize you're riding the subway is the first time that you realize like, dang, things are happening around me. This is a crazy city and I want to be part of the way that it's being built. And I think a lot of my human geo classes kind of also supplemented this ideology in my head that like the spaces around us, they're very important. They inform a lot of things about us, and I want to be part of that. Obviously, there are other ways to do it, but in that moment, I was like, I'm not doing much. Why not run for city councilor? Why not take the path of, you know, becoming a politician to then influence those spaces that inform us? And so it was definitely rooted in just like this hope to become part of the group of people that do impact these spaces, but also just, you know, general curiosity, like what would it be like what would it be like to be a politician, like what does the political scene actually look like in Toronto? To be quite honest, I don't really care too much for provincial or federal politics, just because those are things that are often so out of reach for people. And then, you know, as a city gal, you know, I really only care about what happens to Toronto because they happen to me. So those are the things I pay attention to.
And
I guess there's only one way to find out how to be, what it feels like to be a politician, is to try and become one.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I just have one point that really stuck out to me was realizing that there is so much happening in the space around you, and then wanting to have a hand in dictating how that space is developed and maintained and preserved or changed. And at least in my experience in all this time, where we've been so displaced from the spaces that we were so accustomed to, and where we don't have much choice to dictate which spaces we find ourselves in, so to say, I think the realization of the importance of spaces and the atmosphere that they bring with themselves is something that I've realized so much more now. And I'm wondering what the two of you think about this.
Yeah, no, Abe, go for it.
no, I mean, I guess for more context, so in first year in our monk class, we all got into our different teams, and I think all three of us were in different teams, and we all had to work on one SDG and find a local problem that we wanted to address and create our own solution. And when Renee, when your group presented your idea about improving the greenery in the subway system in the TTC, like that absolutely resonated with me, because as someone from BC, we have a SkyTrain here, not a subway. Like a SkyTrain already sounds so amazing. It's an above the ground train system, and it's so beautiful because I love going on the SkyTrain because you could see all the mountains, the greenery, the sunset, like you could see science world. Like, there's so many amazing things that you see. And I remember the first time I got on the TTC, first of all, my phone didn't work. I couldn't text. Like, my data wasn't working. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'll look outside. And I like, you know, you look outside and all you see is gray. And like what Atharv said about the spaces dictating how we feel, that's so true. Renee, can you talk a bit more about like that process of seeing that problem and then the process of going from that idea to solution and wanting to do something about it? Because I think that's something you touched on. It's so interesting.
For sure.
Can I just say before that?
With this context in mind of the SkyTrain, I'm going to be perpetually disappointed every time I step onto a TTC. Thank you for that. Oh man.
Yeah, no, so I think what was nice is that everyone in my group, our topic was life on land, that sustainable development goal that has to do with, you know, extraterrestrial? No, just terrestrial ecosystems, the ones on Earth. And so yeah, when you think about that issue and like protecting biodiversity and, you know, reducing deforestation, I think a lot of people immediately go to, you know, yeah, those like beautiful ecosystems and rainforests. And obviously Toronto is not home to any of those characteristics. But at the same time, we do suffer from, you know, a lack of beautiful ecosystems that, you know, help to not only benefit our mental health and well-being, but also just, you know, sustain different examples of biodiversity. So that was the topic. And then we had to focus it on Toronto. And we were like, how do we get here? How do we get there? And I mean, if anyone is listening to this podcast and have heard me tell this story, you've heard this 1,000 times, but my team was in my room, we're eating pasta, it's late at night. And all of a sudden we start thinking about like how dirty and disgusting the subway is and how the air quality is so poor. And then we eventually find, data to back this up. And so we're like, okay, if the air quality is low, how do we fix that? I guess filtration systems. And then we're like, wait, our SDG is life on land. This has nothing to do with plants. How do we put plants into this? And then I was like, what if we make it a green wall that also filters air? And we're like, okay, this is a little bit out of the realm, but like, sure. So that was the idea that we were running with. And I think we prepared another idea to pitch to our TA because we were like, there's no way she agrees to us putting green walls that also filter air underground in the subway. But yeah, we show up the next morning and Emily's like, yeah, that's good. And we're like, okay. Like she said, it's okay, we can go. So yeah, moving forward with that, we kind of just found ways to make it feasible, and it very much so is feasible. There are plants that don't necessarily require a lot of light, but there are some subway stations that do have access to light. It's really just a matter of, putting in systems that allow for water to reach the plants. But filtration systems already exist. It is a proven issue that a lot of portions of the Green Line and the TTC have really poor air quality levels. And so that needs to be mitigated. But also, yeah, how crazy would it be to have plants underground, to let people see plants underground and enjoy green spaces? Because, my commute from my house to campus is about 30 to 40 minutes. And that's a lot of time spent underground or just in transit, not experiencing the things around us. But as well, there are individuals that because of where you are located or, the fact that you're underrepresented in many aspects of city politics, you simply just don't have access to green space either. Green space has become a luxury. And so given the fact that you probably live super far out of the city, right? And then you have to travel into the city to do work or go to school, that entire time, you're not seeing one damn tree. So, it would be crazy if a couple stations had some plants, had some green walls that you could just sit amongst, while you're waiting for your St. George train to come, just have a peaceful moment with some plants. So yeah, that's how we made it feasible. And then we proceeded to pitch it to a bunch of different people within the city. An individual that worked for the business improvement area, an individual that worked for the city of Toronto as a planner. And we got a lot of crazy good feedback, but also just a lot of support for the idea, which was really exciting. Because no one had really thought of or done something like that. And so it was hard to kind of measure it against other things, because I know that one part of that assignment was like, okay, so explain why this would work. And we're like, we don't know that it would work. Like, no one's ever done this. You just have to take the chance on us, please. And so, yeah, while we did not, end up successful at the end of our course in terms of winning the competition to put it into motion, we have still been working on it during the summer and even now, contacting different people, kind of testing it out, trying to put it into a prototype level. As I mentioned before, becoming city councillor would have definitely made that easier, because again, it is weird coming at it as, now a second year student still with very little credentials. But it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see it in different realms of academia, politics, but now kind of just as like an entrepreneurial idea.
Yeah. Make the Green Line green again.
Okay. I'll write that down. Make the Green Line green.
That is good. That works. Honestly, Renee, I think what is so powerful about what you said is we all resonate with that experience, even if you're not used to a magical sky train that goes through the sky.
He called it magical now.
It is.
He's just adding adjectives to it.
It's the mountains. It's that makes it magical. You have mountains, it's magical. But I think that's something that people will resonate with. The idea that you need green spaces in life, and this is more than just an issue of luxury. It's actually an issue of equity. Who actually gets access to these green spaces? Renee, I'd love to hear more now about like your campaign and what that was like. So you mentioned little things like creating a bank account and creating a website, but also like getting featured on big news networks and all of that. What was that process like? Because I think for the average person, it seems like all of that stuff is so difficult to achieve. But you kind of talked about how you did it step by step to achieve the end goal of trying to get elected.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was step by step. I think I think we thought about it and wrote it down, but we didn't exactly know how it would happen. I guess in regards to like news outlets picking it up, but I'll tell that story. So if anyone's from Toronto, the GTA, Ontario, likely Canada, you've probably heard of a website called BlogTO. Kind of notorious for top 10 insert name.
It's where I get all my food recommendations from.
Exactly. Very reliable source. And so we, Zoe had a mutual friend that worked with BlogTO, and they connected us with a writer. And I was just like, hey.
I exist.
Yeah. Just wondering like if you might want to help me out. And one thing that I'm really bad at is asking people for things, because I just hate doing that. Like I'm not the type of person that can like, I'm not a good finesser, I'm not a good networker. I would much rather prefer to play the long game of like, let's have a 2-year friendship and then maybe I ask you to like do something for me. So I was definitely put in that weird position where I either outsourced it in terms of like asking Zoe or like our friend Will to do it, or I sent the email and like closed my laptop and like closed my eyes. So yeah, we sent that one email, quick response, got some questions. They wrote up an article and it was like out within a day. And so what's interesting about BlogTO, or is unique about BlogTO, is, you know, they have so many platforms where so many people are consuming so much of their stuff. That it gets to way too many people. And so, you know, it gets to Facebook, people on Facebook see it, they comment, they share, they like, and then eventually it gets to other people. And so that's, yeah, I like went to bed. I went to bed after that day of BlogTO posting it, and then like woke up with like City News in my DMs and CBC being like, are you free at 5 p.m. today? And I'm like, I have school, woman. Okay. So yeah, it like that was not strategic whatsoever. Like I don't think in our head we thought about the fact that, oh yeah, if we reach out to like this very popular Toronto like food blog, that it could like branch out to things becoming a little bit more legitimate. But that's how that happened. So there was definitely getting attention, which helped in terms of like, you know, getting my platform out, having opportunities to talk with people. Like I was on radios, I had radio interviews. It was so strange. Like these are things I've never encountered before. Or
Most people haven't.
I know, but like there was no reason for these people to be giving me like the time of day to talk about these things. But I think what I didn't want this to lead my campaign, but I think what ended up leading my campaign was my age. Because yeah, how absurd. A 19-year-old involved in politics cares about, you know, her life and well-being and the people that make decisions. So yeah, a lot of people picked up on that, and I don't think I had an interview where someone asked, or someone didn't ask, so 19, huh? Shouldn't you be doing anything else? And so yeah, most of my campaign was spent honestly like defending my character as a 19-year-old, as a, you know, woman of color, as a student. People constantly questioning my motives because like, you're so young, or like you haven't owned a house yet, you haven't had a family. Which, you know, if that's what you want out of your politician, sure, but I don't. Like, I will likely never own a house. Like, I don't know if I want a family. The only thing that will change is like, yeah, I'm just older and likely more out of touch. So yeah, that was most of my campaign. And then the other logistical things kind of just came and went. But again, even those things were impacted by my age. And like getting a bank account, my bank that I had been with for my entire life and even before, because I don't know, my parents are doing crazy stuff. but they were like, so 19, huh? You want to open a bank account for your campaign? Shouldn't you be doing anything else? And I was like, guys, like, I'm not pulling your leg. Like legally, the city of Toronto requires me to open a bank account for this campaign. Like, I don't want this to be my personal like finances. Please let me open this account. And that was a whole other thing. So yeah, outside of that, or actually not outside of that, I think also another thing that defined my campaign was just, you know, feeling very, I don't want to say inadequate, but because people were constantly questioning me, I was like, yeah, like I am 19. Shouldn't I be doing something else? Like, am I the right person for this? Like, probably not. And it did really help to have people around me to support me, to like support my ideas, to support my intent. Because, and not to say that no one else has this experience, but I feel like when talking to, you know, previous city councilors even, or just like current politicians in different levels, not to say that they had, you know, ulterior motives, but they had the confidence of like, I've been in this game for several decades now. Like, I have investors, like my donators donate thousands of dollars. and I was just like, yeah, you know, I have my friends, we meet ever so often, we get stuff done. And I feel confident in that. I feel confident in my ideas, but that's like apparently not enough. You know, you do have to have some other agenda. And so, I mean, I would love to hear if you guys have this experience at any point, but like, I think that was my first like true imposter syndrome of like, yeah, I'm getting attention for this thing that I care about, but like, why, like, why is it not connecting with other people? Is it because they like see through me? Like, but what are they seeing through? So yeah, I mean, I would love to hear if you guys have any experiences with imposter syndrome in other realms.
You know, it's I had somebody, a first year mentee of mine, tell me on his first day in Canada, in the middle of the semester, as an international student, having lost his phone on his first day out, and we thought it was stolen for the longest time. And when we did eventually find it, actually this was before, I took him out for ice cream and we were just talking, and he told me that resilience is such a privilege. If I didn't have the systems of support around me, look at me, I am 18 years old, in a new country, an ocean away from home, with no point of contact with my family or anybody I know, and yet I'm doing okay. I haven't broken down physically, mentally, emotionally. It's because I have the privilege of resilience. And what you were talking about with all this, I don't want to say negativity, but this, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Questioning, pushback.
There's this insinuation in the inquisitiveness that comes around. There's no curiosity, there's an insinuation in there that could break down most people. But having that system of support, that strong wall to support you and for you to fall back on, that trust can make all the difference in you doing something and you not doing something. And that's something that I believe myself, and it's really endearing and encouraging to hear that be your experience too.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that I did break down a couple of times. I can't say that I was, you know, strong the entire time. But I think what was unfortunate about that experience was just realizing, like, as a young person and as a young, like, well, let me rephrase this. Okay, as a young person in politics, as a young person in Toronto, as a young person in politics in Toronto, and then just as a young person, like, it is so hard. It is so hard. Like, it's so hard to justify yourself. It's so hard to attach credibility to like your purpose, your ideas. And so I think that's why a lot of people around our age or that are involved in these realms like experience imposter syndrome so frequently and like so intensely, because I think our systems of like approval and justification, they're so dependent on like other people that not necessarily our peers, but just like older people or more established people. And so that's something I talked a lot about with, like my friends within the campaign. I talked a lot about that with my parents. And I talked a lot about that with just like people that were politicians. And what they told me, which I thought was really interesting, as a politician, it was like, just because someone has had this job for 60 years doesn't mean they've been doing a good job for all 60 of those years. And I was like, I see. Not to say that we've never thought about that, but it's like, it was just so good to hear, because it's like, yeah, man, like I don't think I like hold these people that have been in roles for so long to such a high degree anymore, because yeah, like it doesn't mean that you're being effective, you're being efficient, you're being innovative. And I think that's why it's so important for young people. And like, it's why I get so excited when I see young people get involved in like anything, because it's like, yeah, like right now in this moment, you are very clearly passionate about something, which means you will do good. So please go do it. And that's what I honestly spent like most of my campaign doing, just like talking to people my age. Or around my age that were interested, and just like DM'd me and were like, hey, like, this is cool what you're doing. Like, I hope to do something like this, or like, I'm doing this right now. And I'm like, yes, go do it. Like, it's more important that you maintain that energy for it, because like the people that are currently in power or people that hold these roles for so long, they don't have the energy. They just have this like mystified credibility, which is very strange. But yeah.
That's so true. Like, that's absolutely like there's people that I know that are in office, for example, and I just look at them and I'm like, they've been here forever, but my community hasn't changed. And I think we all see that. And I think what you raise is such an important point, that like when we talk about diversity, we don't want diversity just for the sake of diversity. And young people being involved in decision making is such an important aspect of diversity. Like, we need different age ranges in politics, not just because they're young and they'll be on the table, but because of what they bring, those ideas, that energy, that youth, that that consistency and that determination to get things done, because we care about these things and they impact us. Renee, so we know you didn't end up winning the election, but you learned so many things along the way, and you inspired a ton of people, like you just said. And again, we're talking to you right now because, like, not only are you a really cool person, but I think I can speak on behalf of Atharv when I say this. You inspired us too, in the way that you ran for office, and you battled these challenges. And although they might be small to other people and they may not seem that big, people denying that you're legit, and people saying that you don't deserve to be there. I think it's so incredible that you have that resilience, and like Atharv talked about, you develop those support systems to be able to move past that. What was your main takeaway from all of this?
Ooh, my main takeaway. Oh no. I mean, there's
Your response has to be a single page, single space. Anything more will be penalized.
That monologue was like an essay description in a Mug 1 class.
I know. I'm so sorry. I think, okay, one like just personal takeaway that I think, okay, this isn't like a lesson. This is not a life lesson that many people will ever be able to relate to. But I was like really floating between academic interests. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I was interested in switching to architecture. I thought that's what I wanted to do at the beginning of like last school year. And then I had this weird campaign experience where I spent a lot of time involved in like the policy, not the policy making, but just like, adjacent of like thinking up policy. And then from that, I realized like, I don't want to be in politics. I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to be a facade for ideas. I want to be part of like the the organizations and other institutions and communities that actually do the work that like we hope to see. Because a lot of my time was also spent just talking to different organizations and community leaders within the riding that were doing the things that the city had failed to do, because they've been lacking, an effective leader for so long, or just effective representation. So after that, I committed to my degree of human and environmental geography with a focus in planning. And I think that was very important for me because, university is a very scary place in terms of, especially U of T, where you have literally like no limit in terms of what you can study, when you study it, why you study it. The combinations are endless and crazy. And I entered U of T thinking I was going to do political science and economics, and I'm very much so not on that path. So anyway, my main takeaway from the campaign, from like that experience, was just like, I really care about the spaces that we live in. I care about the way that they inform our well-being, our identity, and I care about the people within those spaces. And human geography allows me to study that, but also allows me to problem solve in a way that is not limited by like the bureaucracy of politics. And so, yes, again, this is not a life lesson. Just my main takeaway was like, dang, this is like, it really helped me narrow down what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm not sure in what capacity it will be done, but that's what I'm interested in, and that's what I'm passionate about.
As somebody who's done a lot of research recently, and the research process just reminds me of the fact that even a negative data point is a data point. No, realizing what you don't want to do or how you don't want to do something is still a lesson, it's still a learning, and that in itself is a gift. And if there's anything, speaking of learning of this, there's so much to take from this conversation, but one thing that I resonate with myself and clearly shown through in this conversation too is that whenever people ask me why am I doing this, why am I doing anything at the age that we are at, I just tell them that in this moment, right this moment, I feel very strongly about doing this. And sure, down the line, in a few years, with age, I'm expected to get better at it. That's just how nature works. But I don't know what the future holds. I don't know where I will be. I don't know what I will be doing. And I don't know what my circumstances will be. But right this moment, I'm passionate. I'm curious. I have the ability to do something, and I have a shot at it. And I'm not giving away my shot. And that seems to be a very, very prominent principle that seems to have guided your life. And I think that's something that we can all inculcate in our daily lives as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think if anything to extend on that is just when you are evaluating, the choices in your life, like I would encourage people to consider like why you're doing it. And if it is because you're truly passionate at that moment, then that's something you need to explore. And I think, especially if you are interested in politics, having that genuine passion and drive is incredibly important because, if it fades away, that's when you become an ineffective leader. And so I agree when people asked me, like, you're 19, like, why are you doing this? Or like, do you think you'll become like a career politician? Like, will you be doing this in the next election? I was like, I genuinely don't know, because if I'm not passionate about it in the way that I am right now, then there's no reason for me to be running. Like, there's the door. I should be exiting. And, that's how I feel right now. And it's only a couple months after. But that's because, I learned from that. I've explored different opportunities and I'm passionate about those. So I guess that is another takeaway that could be a life lesson for other people. If you're not passionate about it, don't do it, because it's a waste of your time, other people's time, and your energy can definitely be put to better use.
Yeah, definitely. Like, do what you're passionate about. But going beyond that, I know, like, stereotypical or like cliche statement that we hear, like pursue your dreams. But it's about a lot more than that. It's about figuring out what you really want to do and doing it in the present moment. And if you don't like it, that's totally okay. And that's probably better, like you said, Atharv, to figure out that early on so you can figure out what you want to do. Renee, this has been such a pleasure. Like, we've talked about everything from your journey throughout this past year of the pandemic. We've talked about your experience in politics, what you learned through running. Everything about your journey is just so fascinating in the political realm. I mean, again, it may seem simple, but I think the ways that things came together, the momentum that you grew and the people that you inspired, that's so commendable.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
Well, this has been another fascinating, thought-provoking, and insightful conversation on Different Boat, Same Storm. We'll be back again very, very soon with a different guest at the same time, in a different boat, but in the same storm.